So many people automate at the beginning, and if they have a shitty process, they're automating a shitty process. I mean, if revenue doubles, but your problems triple, all you've done is, multiply chaos.
And someone shoves them into the river, and now you're struggling for your life. Whose job is it to get you out? It's your own.
First of all, if you're building a company and it gets beyond a certain stage and it's still dependent upon you running it, you're not building a company. You hustled your way to the top. Let me ask you a question, Simon. He says, why aren't you sat where I'm sat? No, I don't.
Because no one wants to look stupid. It's everybody's greatest fear of all, is looking stupid. You've said that most companies don't have a growth problem, they have a focus problem. What does that actually look like when you see it in the data?
When I go into an organization, I look at a couple of things first.
Welcome back to The Formula. I'm Peter Roth, and I get founders who built big things to expose their actual formulas, like the marketing, the software, the coaches, no fluff, whatever made them rich. So grab a pen. My guest today is Simon Crawford Welch, who I've known for many years. He took a luxury treehouse retreat from 3.5 million to 14 million in just 2 years, while tripling their daily rate and hitting 94% occupancy. He spent 3 decades scaling hospitality businesses across 17 countries, led global operations for 138 resorts at Diamond Resorts International, and holds a PhD in marketing and strategic management from Virginia Tech. Simon Crawford Welch, welcome to The Formula.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. You know what they say about those PhDs, right? It's a BS, MS, PhD, Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, PhD. It's actually bullshit, more shit, and pie eye deep in shit.
Love it. So why'd you get it? Let's start there. Why'd you get it?
I didn't want to go out into the real world and thought I could just keep postponing reality, and ended up with a PhD from Virginia Tech.
Is that why most people who end up getting higher degrees think they do it because they don't know what the hell they're going to do with their life? So they figure, well, I'll just stay here in this tiny little bubble for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know, Peter. I mean, I had at the time I had been in Australia and I was back in England. I always had a desire to come to America. I'd always lived that comic book dream, the American dream, and thought that it was the land of opportunity. And so one of the ways to get in was to get a skill that nobody else had. In other words, you couldn't take a job or a position from an American citizen. So if you specialized in a particular area, then you were able to get a green card at the time and then ultimately citizenship. So that's what I did.
Love it. I want to jump in. I got some really fun questions for you, and I think you're going to like these. So most people use growth and scaling pretty much interchangeably, but you treat them as completely different things. What's the distinction that most founders are missing here?
Two totally different things. And a lot of founders confuse the two or don't understand the difference between the two. Growth is really just increase inputs, right? So you want to get revenue, top line revenue, you increase spend, you increase people, you increase initiatives. That's growth. Scaling is actually increasing the output per input. So you're getting more efficient. So an example might be your CAC, your customer acquisition cost, goes down as you scale. Your conversion rate goes up. So, I mean, if revenue doubles, but your problems triple, all you've done is, multiply chaos. You're not growing. You're actually declining. And a lot of founders mistake that growth curve, that top line revenue, for scaling. Scaling is getting more out of less. Big difference.
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's the difference in between scaling and becoming more economic or more efficient, rather? Why don't we just use the word efficiency?
Well, efficiency is almost implies a kind of a static, whereas scaling implies something that has momentum. So you can become very efficient and stay in the same place. The key is to stay efficient or become more efficient as you grow.
So could you say that scaling maybe is another way to say growth plus efficiency?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. You've said that most companies don't have a growth problem, they have a focus problem. What does that actually look like when you see it in the data?
Man, it's when I go into an organization, I look at a couple of things first. I could call them the signals in terms of the tell me what's going on in the organization. So I call them the 3 C's. So I'll look at contribution margin. And this is a concept that most founders don't get. They look at EBITDA, or they look at bottom line profit. They look at top line growth. They don't look at contribution margin. So I'll look at the contribution margin of individual product lines, service lines, or campaigns. Because I can have a campaign, for example, that has a high ROAS, but it's not contributing because the variable costs associated with it are rendering it almost negative. So contribution margin is one of the first things I look at to see whether a company is focused on the right place. The second one is customer acquisition cost, but not just as an absolute number. I look at it in terms of the payback period. So how long does it take if you cost you $2,000 to acquire a customer? How long does it take you to make that money back? It's not top line revenue, right? It's the contribution margin to pay back that customer acquisition cost. Because if it takes too long, if it takes 7, 8 months to get your CAC back, your customer acquisition cost, you're going to run yourself out of business. You're going to have a cash flow issue.
Of course.
And the third thing I look at is funnel conversion rate, right? I go through the funnel with a microscope, look at it from start to finish. There's always leakage. There's always leakage somewhere, whether it's the top of the funnel, the click through rate, the close rate. Somewhere there's money leaking out the door. So those are the three things. Very simple formula, the three C's. That's what I look at to get my initial feel for how the organization is doing.
What are those three C's again? Repeat them.
Okay, you've got your contribution margin,
Got it.
you've got your customer acquisition cost, but in terms of the payback period, and your funnel conversion.
What do you see for funnel conversions? Let's park there for a quick second. And I don't know if this is too vague of a question for you, but what do you see as far like what's a healthy funnel? And I realize we're talking all industries across the board here, but I think my audience tends to be maybe in the internet marketing space a little bit, maybe, and home services, which are two wildly different things, obviously. But what do you see, for someone maybe in the internet marketing space who's selling, whether it's like, digital marketing type stuff or vice versa, someone who's in, the home services space, so trying to get people to book appointments with their team. What do you see as a healthy conversion rate, if you can answer that question?
Given your company and your background, I would be a fool to answer that question. But I can tell you what I'm used to it in the verticals that I specialize in. And, a lot of people talk about conversion rate as the be all and the end all number. I got a top of funnel first. It's like, how many people are you getting into the top of funnel? But not just people, how many people with high intent? Because anybody can fill the funnel.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, garbage
Yep.
in, garbage out.
Yep.
So you gotta go to the top of funnel, fill it with high intent leads. In mine, I say my industry, the space that I've spent most of my career in, the hospitality space. For a 5-star luxury property, the cradle to grave from the top of the funnel to match making a sale, anything between 4 to 6% is outstanding. I don't know how that compares to your business, but that's generally an outstanding conversion rate for a luxury hospitality company.
And what are you doing to narrow that funnel? On the one hand, you want to cast as wide of a net as possible so that you're not losing volume, but on the other hand, you want qualified leads. How many qualifying questions? What are the things that you're doing to sort of narrow that funnel a little bit so that you're keeping a healthy balance between wide, broad appeal, but at the same time getting qualified leads? Like in your industry, I'm just curious.
It's such a tough question to answer because my goodness, the world is changing at such a velocity. It's hard to keep up. I mean, look at what AI is doing now with these agentic bots, and they're producing data and information that would take you 6 weeks, to get normally, that you can now get in a couple of hours, literally. So the thing that I really focus on is engagement. I really don't care about impressions. I used to back in the day. Well, it's kind of
Vanity, yeah.
evolved. Oh, you
It's a
cared about
vanity.
yeah, you cared about likes. You cared
Yeah,
about.
I'm popular. I'm popular now.
I've got 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. That's great. You making any money? No.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I really look at engagement. So, and that's changed the nature of the copy and the nature of the message that we send. The format. I mean, short form video is taken off. I mean, whoever thought YouTube would be what it was 10 years ago today in terms of advertising, in terms of generating leads. So short form video, generating high engagement and establishing a relationship. And I think today, more so than ever, there's a need for authenticity and there's a need to be genuine. People know when they're being spoken to by a machine, right? They know when they're engaging. There are telltale signs if you've been around this business long enough. You know when it's a
Mhm.
machine versus you. And people want authenticity and they want high levels of engagement. So our copy focuses on creating that engagement and building relationships. And that's really how we went. You mentioned Bolt Farm earlier. That's how we went from a couple of 100,000 followers on Instagram to now I think 760,000 in 2.5 years. It was just creating that engagement. which is a whole other story. But
Speaking of engagement, what are your thoughts on high level CEOs? I'm talking like almost billionaires now, or even billionaires. What are your thoughts now? Because I'm seeing a lot of like really super high profile CEOs starting to develop personal brands, where in the past they wouldn't do that kind of stuff. They would rely on PR. Like PR was their form of brand of personal branding back in the day. Whereas now the modern day version of PR is personal branding through social media, and you definitely see it, with the likes of Musk and even Bezos and Mark Cuban, right? So you definitely see it, a lot of it. Are you seeing that more and more happening at a really, really high level? We definitely see it at the low level, but are you seeing it at the high level?
absolutely. And interesting, you're now seeing it more and more in public companies and not just private companies,
That's what I mean. Yeah.
which is very interesting because 10, 15 years ago, that would have been a no-no.
If
And I
anything, and but yeah, if anything, boards would be like, stay out of the limelight. We don't
absolutely,
want you out there. You're going to screw something up. You're going to say something stupid. You're going to do something stupid.
yeah. And I think, Peter, I think that's just the result of we're living in such a impersonal world right now where everything's almost, you know, they said with the launch of the internet, there would be a huge increase in information and everybody would make better decisions and everything would be more personalized. Well, that didn't work out too well, did it? I mean, we're not making better decisions. Doubtful we have more information that's factual. We may have more information, but it's not factual. So I think going back to your question, I think there's a real desire on the part of the public to deal with somebody who's a human being and says, "Hey, I'm the CEO. This is where I'm going. I make mistakes, but when I do, I'll fess up to them and we'll move on." But they can't hide behind their PR departments anymore. It's just not possible. So they have to develop a personal brand, which is why you're seeing this huge increase in an industry, the personal branding industry. It didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. And now everybody's got a podcast on it. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's trying to create their own personal brand. And unfortunately, a lot of the branding concepts that work in a industry don't necessarily work for an individual. So you have to be very careful there.
Love it. Let me ask you this. When you walk into a business for the first time, what are the first three metrics that you personally like to pull? And what are they telling you about whether this company can actually scale?
I go back, my favorite hang my hat is contribution margin. I
What do
mean,
you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
contribution margin is so if they're running 7 or 8 products, which products are contributing most to the bottom line? And I focus on complexity because at the end of the day, you've got to keep it simple. I go back to a classic example, Steve Jobs, when he went back to Apple, right? They had dozens of product lines, right? He cut everything to 2 products that he made a home version and a professional version. And they were the desktop and the laptop. That was it. Those were the only 2 products. So he had a quadrant with 4 products in it, right? The desktop for office, the desktop for home, the laptop for office, the laptop to home. And he simplified and got down to focus. So when I go into an organization, invariably they've just their analysis through a paralysis through analysis. They've got this idea that they need all these different tech stacks, that they need all these different platforms, and I go back to Elon Musk and first principles thinking, which is basically let's cut out all the dumb stuff, let's cut out all the efficient stuff, let's not automate until the very very last stage of the process. So many people automate at the beginning, and if they have a shitty process, they're automating a shitty process. They're
Yeah,
becoming
they're amplifying the problem. Yeah, they're scaling a shitty process and making everything worse. Yeah.
exactly right. So I'm a big fan of well, not necessarily a big fan of Elon Musk, but I do believe in some of his principles.
Yeah.
His algorithm, his 5 step algorithm. First of all, question every requirement. So is the fundamental principle behind it dumb? And he gives the example when he was trying to get into the rocket business. He couldn't afford a rocket, so he went to Russia to try and buy a rocket. And they said, yeah, it's there, but it's X millions and millions of dollars. He says, well, that's stupid. Why is it so expensive? And they said, because once you fire it, it's gone. It's in space. It's lost forever. And he said, well, why? And they said, what do you mean why? He said, well, why can't you bring it back to Earth? I said, what do you mean bring it back to Earth? There's no way you can bring a rocket back to Earth. And lo and behold, that's what he did, and he's reusing it. So he had that fundamental question at the very beginning, first principles thinking, go back to the very root cause and question it. Why are we doing this? Why do we have a 9-step sales process? Can it be two? Could it be three? Right? I'm sure every company, and I've been guilty of it many times, introduces these layers in the name of compliance or HR, God forbid, and you just cause inefficiency. The second thing of that is you delete the inefficient stuff, take stuff out. And if you're not adding things back in because you took too much out, you haven't taken enough out. So delete these processes. And I always remember I had a mentor of mine, and he was the chairman of Hilton Hotels. And he said to me, Simon, we're going to have to do some cuts. We're going to have to probably lose 200, 300 people. I said, well, Ed, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to let go of 200 people. And he said, take everybody, metaphorically, take everybody out to the parking lot. Take all 1,000 of them out to the parking lot. You can only bring 200 back in. Decide which 200 add the most value to the company. So, you delete, a bad example with human beings, but delete part of the process that's unnecessary. Simplify what remains, right? Make sure that it doesn't have multiple steps when it could be one step. Then accelerate the cycle time, which is the fourth step. And the fifth step, then automate, right? Do not automate until you've done the first four steps. And that model has served Elon Musk very well, and it served me well when I go into scale a company. Very simple.
Love it. Now, this brings me to my next subject, which is AI. And you just recently wrote a book. Tell us the name of your book.
It's called Artificial Authority When Leadership is Performed Instead of Carried.
Give me the quick rundown of what your book's about.
Quick rundown is that in corporate America right now, probably corporate everywhere in the world, we are outsourcing our thinking to machines that by definition have never had an original thought, right? By definition, they've never had an original thought. So it's so easy to sound fluent in a subject and not have any knowledge about it. You go to these presentations, I sit through them in board meetings, they're polished, they're using all the right words, they know all the data, they're spewing it out. And then you ask them, well, what's your opinion? What do you recommend? What do you think?
I don't actually know. Of course, AI wrote it for me. I have no clue.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Not that they don't know the subject matter, but they come across as being so expert, and you fall for it. You think they're eloquent, they're coherent, they're smart, they're efficient. But at the end of the day, leadership isn't about any of those things. Leadership is about human interaction, right? Leadership is about living with the consequences. AI doesn't have to live with the consequences. AI doesn't care whether what they tell you is right or wrong, right? They just gather all this information depending on the quality of the prompt that you feed it and spew it back at you. But it knows nothing about leadership yet. Now, in another 10 years, that might be different. And I see a lot of leaders out there abdicating leadership, and they're losing the locker room.
So then my question for you is this. This is a two-part question. How are and I want to treat these as two separate questions, but I'll ask them up front. How are you using AI now at a high level, right? At the C-level role, right? In the executive role. How are you utilizing AI for your companies that you're working with? And then I'm going to follow up with how can small business operators and how should they be utilizing AI now? So let's start at the top first, and we'll come back to part two. How are top leaders should they be using AI in a meaningful and profound way?
I think we're going through an evolution of AI right now. And what you're seeing is that the vast majority, probably 68% plus of organizations, are using AI to cut down on the mundane tasks.
Mhm.
So you no longer need to pay somebody 50 grand a year to set appointments on a telephone, right? You can have AI do that for half the cost. You no longer need to spend Sunday evening figuring out how you're going to manage your week because you've got AI an agent in the background organizing it all for you, assigning tasks. So I think a lot of those things are happening now. The theory is that AI is going to cut down your workload. That's horseshit, right? AI is actually going to increase your workload because what it's doing is it's cutting out all those things that you spent time busy work, and it's focused because it does that for you. So now you really have to know your stuff, and you have to focus on execution and getting results, and you can't hide. There's no hiding behind AI. And if you're there, a lot of people in corporate America are finding that out, that they've been hiding for many years getting paid 150, 200, 300 grand a year. Nobody really noticed them. And now all of a sudden AI's coming along and going, well, it's doing AI's doing what took you a month in 2 hours. Right. But I think that's the stage we're at in corporate America. They're using it to automate the mundane tasks. I'm not sure, by the way, Peter, that they followed that 5 step process that I just outlined. I think they're automating the tasks that they already had. So now they're just becoming very efficient at being inefficient. Right.
Hmm. So, okay, let me re-ask the question again. How do you see large organizations, large companies utilizing AI best? Is it for creating agentic type tasks? I'm assuming. Is it for coding and for creating their own software that otherwise they would have had to hire out for big dollars? Is it both?
It's both. I mean, I have a ex partner of mine who has a digital marketing agency. I think he has 6 or 7 developers. Just fired them all. Doesn't need them. Doesn't need them. And everybody's become a vibe coder, whatever that means. Right? Everybody's now an expert.
It
Uh,
means it means I know how to talk into a browser and tell it to go do shit.
right. Right. Again, a little bit of abdication there because if things go wrong, you really don't know why it's going wrong or how it's going
Hmm.
wrong. Or, open source environment, and all of a sudden you've got security issues, blah, blah, blah. Um, so I think it's both. I think there's a lot of content creation being done using AI. I think there's a lot of copywriting being done. And it really goes back to the sophistication of the prompt, and that's why you're seeing all these businesses starting up that specialize in prompt design. I mean, who would have thought there would have been a business specializing in prompt design? But if you AI does what you tell it to do. So if you're very simplistic and very superficial, it's going to give you a simplistic, superficial answer, fluently, eloquently, quickly, but it's going to be superficial.
Okay. Now let's talk about small business owner, right? 99% of businesses in the US are small, right? Under probably $1 million in sales. So what would you tell that business owner, Main Street America business owner? What are the top three-ish things that you would tell them to start utilizing AI for now? The kind of guy who's afraid of tech, the kind of guy who's like, I haven't even opened up Chat GPT because I don't even know how to work it. Like, what would you tell that small business owner? Here are three things that anybody can start using AI for right now to make your life better.
Great question. Um, I would tell them to go take a 3 hour course on Claude Cowork and figure out how that will change your life because it will change your life.
Love it.
As a small business owner, my guess is you're the admin person, you're the HR person, you're the finance person, you're the human resource, you're all those people. Claude Cowork will give you back 30 hours of your week if you're a small business owner. Unless, of course, you're on the phone selling, it won't give you that back. But so I would recommend go immerse yourself in Claude Cowork for 3 to 6 hours and get a feel for it.
I
Um,
love that.
that would be my number one thing. My
I love
second,
that. It comes down, what is it, Benjamin Franklin who said, if you give me an hour to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 45 minutes sharpening my axe.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly the same thing here, right?
And I mean, look, Peter, I'm 63. Um, technology did not come naturally to me, right? I mean, when I remember taking my doctorate, it was literally writing the essays out on a pad. So there's a certain amount of fear there. There's a certain amount of imposter syndrome where I'm not worthy of this. Really shouldn't be doing this. But it's amazing the number of people who let that fear, and what's the old saying for fear? False equivalency appearing real, right? So it's amazing how many people let that get the better of them. So I would say don't be afraid, jump in there. And the third thing I would say for the small business owner would be, and it sounds cliche, it's not meant to be, determine what business you're in, right? Because I'll give you an example of Bolt Farm. When I joined them, they thought that they were in the treehouse, mirrored cabins, and dome business. That's the business they thought they were in. If you ask them what business they're in today, they're in the relationship rejuvenation business. And all of a sudden, spending $1,200 a night to save your marriage is not such a bad deal Whereas spending $1,200 a night to stay in a mirrored cabin or a dome, you've anchored yourself against Airbnb and everybody else out there.
Mhm.
If you're now really determining what business are you in? You sell ice cream. Are you in the ice cream business? I don't think so. You're in the business of bringing joy, right, and happiness, and bonding families together, and giving children peace of mind, a quiet space in all this noise going on in the world, and lean into that. So just ask yourself, what business am I in? Those would be the three things.
Sell the dream outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not features. It used to be when I grew up, it was fabs, features, attributes, and benefits. Right. Don't talk about the product. Don't talk about fabs. It's not even that anymore. It's what feeling. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, right, people will remember will forget what you said, what you did, what you wrote, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
100%. People buy 100%, 95 based on emotion, 95% based on emotion, 5% based on logic.
Yeah, and that's
You sell
that's
the dream outcome.
a business that you and I are in. People buy on emotion and go home and justify on logic.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
love it. Okay, you mentioned that revenue can lie, but the margins cannot. You've said revenue hides problems, margins expose them. So what metrics are you looking for and why?
Well, EBITDA is a vanity number in my earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. I mean, you listen to bless his soul, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger when they were alive, and they never considered EBITDA as um, KPI to acquire a firm or not. It's just vanity because it really doesn't tell you what the free cash flow is. At the end of the day, for me, especially when you're growing quickly, it's all about free cash flow, right? How much cash are you generating that isn't tied up with capex or anything else? Otherwise, you're going to leverage yourself out of business because you're
I
going
think
to have.
I think most people would confuse EBITDA with exactly what you just said. I think most people would equivocate EBITDA with free cash flow. So can you explain to people how they're different?
Yeah, EBITDA is, as it states, you still got to pay taxes on it. You still got to do everything else with it. Free cash flow is like, once I've taken care of everything in the world, how much cash do I have left over, right? To grow my business. And then again, that's a function of how long does it take me to get my customer acquisition cost payback, right? How long does it take me to get from cradle to grave on a funnel? You've got to accelerate all of those things because at the end of the day, you want free cash. Most new businesses, and you know this, they don't go out of business because there's not a market. They don't go out of business because they don't have a great product or a service. More times than not, they go out of business because they run out of working capital.
I think it's two things. I think it's they ran out of money and they ran out of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? They ran out of passion. They
Mhm.
ran out of the desire to stay in the game.
Yeah. It's
You
hard.
know, like Hormozy talks about it all the time. He talks about like this is not a sprint. There's no finish line to this. The whole key is just stay in the goddamn game. The longer you stay in the game, the better you get at it all day long. So just stay in the game. That's the win.
And
So
it's there's a gap, there's an opportunity out there because, and I'm sure all parents say this, but when I was growing up, you hustled, man. You work 20 hours a day, you work 7 days a week to climb that ladder. And now it's this almost entitlement. Well, I need an emotional recovery day. Okay, I understand that. Those things didn't exist when I was growing up. You hustled your way to the top, and it didn't end. It didn't end on Friday at 5 o'clock. And the weekends were used to get ahead. And I think every successful entrepreneur, there's no distinguish between whether it's a Monday or a Sunday or a Saturday. A day is a day and a day. It's 24 hours to move the needle towards where you're headed. And that's constant, right, if you're an entrepreneur.
So what are your thoughts on hustle culture? Let's talk about that. You just kind of naturally forayed into that subject. What are your thoughts on hustle culture? People getting up at 4 a.m. to go hit the gym, to go hit the ice bath, to post some social media post, how they're in beast mode, right? What are your thoughts on this versus the other guys who will be like, fuck that. As long as you get the work done, who gives a shit what time you do it? I could care less if you start at noon. Just get your work done.
Well, I think there's a lot of heroic leadership out there. Look at me. I get up at 4 o'clock. I come home at midnight. Look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm sacrificing time with my family. I'm not going on vacation because I'm trying to build this company. First of all, if you're building a company and it gets beyond a certain stage and it's still dependent upon you running it, you're not building a company. right? So
Mhm.
I think it was James Clear. I think, and I'm sure I'm gonna mess up this quote, but he said something along the lines of, "People don't rise to their level of their skill set or talent. They fall to the level of their systems."
Yeah, it's a military saying too, right? You don't rise to the occasion, you drop to your level of training.
Right. So systems. If you can run a business and you can do it on 4 hours a week, 4 hours a week, God bless you. God bless you. You just have to be smart enough to figure out how not to become the bottleneck, which is another thing I find when I go into companies, especially between the 1 to 5 million mark. They're not inefficient. It's just that everything has to go through the founder, and the founder is the problem.
Mhm.
And what the passion and the charisma and the force of nature that you need to start a company from scratch is not the same as you need to run a company, right? And that I think is a big ego blow for a lot of founders. But good lord, hire somebody else as a CEO to come in and work 60 hours a week. You go do what you do for the rest of the week.
I love it. And so, most fast-growing companies do eventually hit that wall like you're talking about right now. What's that hidden constraint that you see most often? And maybe what are some other constraints that they don't even see coming around the corner?
Oh, well, when I go into, again, my mind works in systems. So when I go into a company, I look at phases. I look at acquisition, I look at conversion, I look at delivery, I look at retention, and I look at expansion. Those are the five general group. I don't look at marketing, sales, finance, but those five stages, and I kind of overlay on top of that a three pronged approach, which is really efficiency, friction, and alignment. So on acquisition, right? How efficient is it? Well, you look at all the obvious KPIs. You look at friction. Is it is there a is there something that's not happening between top of the funnel or somebody calling the phone room and getting transferred to a qualified salesperson? Is there friction there? And then you look at alignment, which is most noticeable between sales and marketing. You think by this day and age we'd have figured that out, that they're both the same thing. They both have to work hand in hand. um, so those are the five areas that I focus on, overlaid with those three elements, and that really gives me an insight into how the company's doing.
So, if you're watching this podcast right now and you're interested in what Simon here is talking about, I want you to drop a comment below in the comment section telling us what your biggest constraint is. And then Simon will jump in here and where he's got some time and he'll try to address all of your questions. Is that fair?
Love it.
We cool to do it? Okay, great. Drop your comment below. Next, when you're diagnosing a business, how do you identify where the real bottleneck actually lives? Like, do you typically see it like in the marketing side, sales, operations, or maybe just even the CEO himself or something else?
A lot of times, unfortunately, it's the CEO, himself or herself, and the challenge then is I become, instead of a an advisor on how to grow a company, I become a psychiatrist, right, for several hours, and letting them know that, "Look, this is not a bad thing. This is a natural evolution. This is third party stories show without giving away confidentiality. Tell them what happened with many of my clients, etc. When they came to that understanding." Um, so I don't really focus on any functional area of an organization. I focus on those five stages, and it's different. But I'd say between 1 to 5 million, it's the CEO. From five to, and I'm generalizing here, from 5 to 15 million, it's lack of systems.
Mhm.
They're just growing the same things that got them to 5 million. They're doing more of it instead of scaling. And then once, go ahead.
I hear people often say, and this is one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got. One of the biggest, let me make a statement first, and then I'll tell you what
Yep.
my weakness was. One of the statements that I heard, which I thought was brilliant, is that to get to $100,000, you got to learn sales. To get to $1 million, you got to learn marketing. To get to $5 million, you need to learn brand, and to get past $5 million, you need company culture. And that was the area that I struggled with the most. I never really understood company culture. I never really, not that I didn't understand it, I just didn't study it. I studied all the other stuff, sales, marketing, branding, and then never studied company culture. Do you think there's truth to that? And what do you think an owner can do to speed up that process to get to the company culture part?
Well, I do agree with that, those stages that you outlined. And I think company culture is one of the most misunderstood and bastardized concepts that exists in the business world today. It is not, pizza on Friday afternoon. It is not a few nice motivational placards on the wall. It's action. It doesn't matter how many memos you send out, how many motivational speeches you give. And motivation, by definition, Peter, never shows up when you need it most. Right? By definition, it only shows up when it wants to show up. Replace motivation with discipline. Discipline only comes through systems, right? Whether it's I saw you or read something about you, you were talking about you have a trainer coming to your house now, and that's not motivation. You don't wake up at 5 o'clock going rah rah. It's
Oh no, I
discipline,
fucking hate it every single time.
right?
Every time I see them, I'm like, fuck you. I let them in anyway, but I'm like, fuck you for being here. I mean, good morning.
Yeah,
And I still let them in, but I'm not happy about it
it's,
ever.
it's discipline and systems, and setting a company culture is only done. First of all, it comes from the top, right? So many organizations hand that off to a human resource department, or they have these meetings, these company culture meetings. It's a waste of time. You may as well not do it. It comes from the top. It's how you treat people. It's how authentic you are. It's how predictable you are. Very important, right? And how you immerse the organization in that. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's no such thing as a magic wand to create a company culture. Can one person change it? Absolutely.
I'm asking you now from first perspective. What would you tell a company owner that's at that point now where they've reached a certain high level that they haven't been at before and they're realizing, shit, the thing that I'm missing most is company culture? What are the top three things that you would advise them on? Like, here's how you can fast track it to having a good company culture. Do these three things immediately and then you can go from there. But start by doing these three things. What would you tell me? Because I'm literally asking you.
Well, again, I'll go back to my cliche. I would get everybody in a room and ask them, what business are we in? You'd be surprised at the different answers that you would get. And then I would ask them, why are we in this business? And why are you in this business? What's your why?
So the why?
All right.
Sure.
What's your why? And then the way I've done it in the past, I've talked to key executives. And I said, tell me what you want. Peter, what do you as an individual want 5 years from now? What and because this is what the company wants. And maybe they're aligned and maybe they're not. But so many companies have people working for them whose company vision 5 years from now, what they want to be, is very different from their vision. Well, I want to start a family and I want to move to Colorado and I want to, be a rock climber. Cool. Let's make that happen for you. But that's not really where the company's going, right? So that vision. And then the third thing I would probably look at is the high performers. And I would probably see that the majority of those high performers are divas. The majority of them are not going to buy into your culture because, by definition, they're divas, they're independent, and they get away with it because they've been high sales performers. But every time I've let a high performer go, every time the remaining team has more than fulfilled the gap that they left behind. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that are afraid to let their high performers go for that very reason. And that you can't build a culture with people who are you're rowing in one direction and they're drilling holes in the boat, right? And by the way, they're your best friend. That they you think they're your best ambassador, but at the end of the day, they're not.
Got it. What is one scaling decision that you got wrong earlier in your career, and what do you do differently now to get past it?
I think early on in my career, I leaned towards complexity because I had a PhD. I must be the smartest guy in the room. I mean, how arrogant is that,
You're in
right?
the business of overcomplicating things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were
Um,
trained to do it. Yeah.
exactly. I was trained to it. So, the push in the mid 90s towards compliance, especially on the HR side, I fell for that lock, stock, and barrel, and it hurt our company growth because it just is like walking around with an anchor. And I'm not saying they should ignore that stuff, but we're not in the HR business. We're in the business of making revenue and being efficient, doing it ethically, right? Doing it honestly. But we're not in the HR business. The HR business does not control our growth. It can contribute, but it's a staff function. It's not a line function. What do I mean by that? In the military, you have staff and you have line. Line folks, as you know, are the people who go out, they're on the front line, they're in the heat of battle. The staff are the people who bring the catering and bring the munitions. HR is not a line function, right? And I'm sure there are people listening to this who go, You're outdated. You're an albatross." Yes, it is. I don't believe it is. I think it has a valuable place. I think it should have a seat at the board table, but it should not dictate how I run my business.
Love it. All right, I want to switch gears. I want to get to the nature of of this very podcast, which is the formula part of it, right? I want to talk about the actual formulas that bring you success, and I mean really specific stuff like the actual software, the actual agencies, the actual coaches and consultants. I want names. I want the actual things that you use that have brought you or your clients great success. So, number one, you've scaled businesses across 3 decades and multiple continents. What's the one piece of software that's had the biggest single impact on how you operate?
HubSpot.
Say it again.
HubSpot.
HubSpot, CRM.
Yep. HubSpot
Yep.
CRM. Um, without a doubt. Ask me that question a year from now, and I may say Claude Cowork.
Yeah.
It is blowing my mind what I'm playing with right now.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say from a HubSpot probably overall.
Okay. Now, behind every operator at your level, there's usually a coach or a mentor who's changed the game for you. Who's had the biggest influence on how you think about scaling and what did they teach you?
So I was sailing around the British Virgin Islands about 10 years ago, and we stopped off at a little island to refuel. And I see this guy sat in the corner having a beer, sat by himself, long blonde hair. I'm sure you know where this is going. And I go, "Man, that looks like Richard Branson." And so I walk up to the table. And I said, "Mr. Branson, I don't want to take any of your time. I just want to let you know that I'm a huge fan. You've influenced me from day one in my career, and I just wanted to say hello." And he said, "Are you with that group of people over there?" And there was like 4 people over there. I said, "Yeah, but not really. I mean, they can stay over there. They don't need to come over here." He said, "Have a seat." So he asked me, "Tell me your story." So I told him my story and where I was in my career. And he sat there and he listened. At the end of it, he said to me, so let me ask you a question, Simon. He says, "Why aren't you sat where I'm sat?" I'm like, wow. He says, "Because everything you've told me about yourself, your career progression, your education, coming to America, says there's no reason you shouldn't be sat where I'm sat." And that really did a number on me. Right. That really made me go, I am worthy of it. Right. I put my pants on the same way he puts his pants on every morning. And if he can do it, there's no reason why I can't attempt to do it. I always had, we won't get into the childhood trauma, but always grew up with a little bit of an imposter syndrome. That I'm not worthy of this. None of my family had an education. That I'm just faking it. And it took me a while to get over that. So Richard Branson is the answer to that. Current day, Alex Hamosi. Um, if you get rid of the hype, because there's a lot of hype with him and Layla, but once you get below, if you can ignore the hype, don't focus on the delivery, focus on the content, right? Because the content is pretty darn good.
I love that you mentioned imposter syndrome because I'm just as guilty of that as you. And I would posit that you're not even reaching for great things unless you're constantly dealing with imposter syndrome, because that tells you that you're taking yourself outside of your comfort zone every single goddamn day and making yourself out to be something that you're not yet, because you know you're going to go into those pants eventually real soon. Maybe it's not tomorrow, maybe it's not next year, but real soon. And
Yeah,
there's no other way to succeed unless you're experiencing imposter syndrome every single day.
and there's no other in that vein, Peter. There's no other way to succeed unless you launch. So my wife is a graphic designer, and she's a perfectionist. And it will take her 4 weeks to launch a website because she's a perfectionist, right? She believes him and she's a creative. Me, I'm like, just get it up there. If I'm not embarrassed for the first version one, then we didn't do a good
Yeah,
job, right?
please. Yeah.
And I've come to live with that. I've come to accept my failings and my mistakes. And boy, I have the scars to prove that I have made a lot of mistakes. And that's part of the process. And I think when you're younger, you're worried about the perception other people will have of you. Now I don't.
Because no one wants to look stupid. It's everybody's greatest fear of
Right?
all is looking stupid.
Nobody's focused on, "Oh, what's Simon gonna do today? Is Simon gonna mess up today? Is Simon gonna do a good job?" They have their own lives and issues to deal with. They're not really that concerned about what I'm doing.
Have you read the book Ready, Fire, Aim?
I have, yeah,
That's
yeah,
exactly what it's about. If you haven't read this book, it's fantastic, right? It should be Ready, Aim, Fire. It's Ready, Fire, Aim. Take action. Just go. You'll fill in the blanks later.
yeah. And entrepreneurs, I think the good entrepreneurs, the one thing they have in common is they don't look at failure as failure. It's just like it's a required stepping stone,
It's
right?
tuition.
Yeah, it's tuition. Yeah,
It's tuition.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. You've led teams of 120 plus people across creative, media, tech. What's the one book, leadership, business or otherwise, that you'd put in the hands of every executive trying to scale right now?
Well, there are so many great books out there, business books, but the one book that I have everybody read, this is gonna blow your mind, I think, has nothing to do with business. It's called "When Bad Things Happen to Good People," and it's written by a rabbi, a man of God,
Oh yeah, I read this book. Yeah, I'm Jewish. I did read this book. Yeah, yeah.
who's
Yeah, it's been a long time. I was in high school, I think, but tell people about it. Yeah.
right, and the lesson that I take from that is nobody's coming to save you, right? As an entrepreneur, that's just the harsh reality. There's no white knight coming in, or if they are, they're going to dilute you so much it's not your business anymore, right? So nobody's coming to save you. Life is hard. Choose your hard. You know, being fat is hard. Being slim is hard. Being single is hard. Being married is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Being a W-2 is hard. Just pick your hard and focus on it and do it. So,
Love it. Pick your heart.
yeah.
I used to see a therapist for a long time, and he brought up this wonderful analogy, which really left a very lasting impression on me. I was going through a pretty tough time. It was a few years ago, and he said, let me give you a story. Guy's walking down the riverbank, and someone jumps out of the trees, and he shoves him into the river, and now you're struggling for your life in the river. Whose fault was that? And the answer was, well, of course, it was the other guy. Whose job is it to get you out? It's your own. Right. And I think that analogy, I think that helped because so many people feel wronged, right? They feel like, well, I was abused as a child, or I went through these tough experiences, in my younger years, and now here I am. Right. But whose job is it to get you out of that fast moving river?
I had a very similar experience. Well, we're going deep on this one. I went through a lot of childhood trauma, and when it really didn't hit me until I was in my mid 30s when I had to deal with it. Because, like all men, I had it compartmentalized in a box, but it comes out, right. It finds its way out, and I did go to therapy, and very similar conversations. Like, it's not your fault that you were abused as a child, right? It is your responsibility to deal with it as an adult, right?
Hmm.
Anybody else's, not your wives, not your family, you. You have to be the one to deal with it. And ties in with the whole theme, like nobody's coming to save you. You got to
Yep.
save.
Yep. Okay.
When you realize that, Peter, in business, it's liberating.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. It's challenging. It sucks at first. Again, pick your suck. It
Yep,
sucks at first, but yeah, it's extremely liberating once you take full ownership and full accountability of everything. It becomes very liberating because you get better at it. It's
yep.
like anything else. It's a muscle. Okay. At Bolt Farm, I know you went from 9% margins to 35% margins in 2 years. So when it came to the agencies or the outside partners that you brought in, what do the right ones do differently? And how do you vet these types of groups or agencies or consultants before you actually hire them?
Another great question because I've been on both sides of the pendulum of this. At one point in my life, I was like, well, you don't have to be an expert at anything, just outsource it, which has its benefits. But also, there's a tendency when you outsource, you're one of 50 clients, right? And nobody cares about your business the way that you care about your business. And it's, by the way, it's unrealistic to expect them to care about your business the way that you do. Chances are they don't have an equity piece in it. An employee on some performance incentive, but it's your dream, not their dream, right? Unless they have an equity piece. Um, so agencies, I think, mixed emotions. We had a email agency. We have a PR agency. I say have. I'm still working with them a little bit, but overall, I would shy away from doing, especially now with the advent of AI. Um, why pay 15 grand a month retainer when I can pay, less than 500 a month for a platform that does most of the stuff, and have an internal person overlook it before we ship it, do a full send. Um, so I think as I'm maturing, which is funny to say at my age, but as I'm evolving, I'm kind of shying away from that outside agency model.
Okay. You've built a $50 million resort marketing operation, led 138 resorts across 17 countries, and now you're running the Scale Up company. What's the one specific service or tool that most founders are sleeping on that you think is genuinely underutilized at the growth stage?
Well, if you'd asked me that question a year ago, I would have given you a different answer. But obviously, in this day and age, it's AI.
Yeah.
It just opens up a whole new world if you use it correctly. Um, and if you don't, you're going to get left behind, and you're not going to get left behind next year. You're going to get left behind by August, right?
Other than AI.
Yeah.
Other
other,
than AI.
other than AI, um, the one thing that they're sleeping on fragmentation and leakage. And I say that because I'm thinking of what are the two things that I nearly always
I'm going to push you here. I'm going to push you here. I want to know a specific service or tool, like the name, a real service or tool that any small business owner
oh,
will
I'm sorry.
utilize today. Yeah. Yeah.
um other than AI. Well, I can tell you that one of the things that did wonders for us, and you're probably familiar with it, was 5 9 for our dialer. It just worked wonders. And then in terms of a tool that really focuses on attribution, because I think that's an area where a lot of organizations struggle. Is how do I attribute to a particular campaign or to a non-paid campaign, just general generic branding? How do I attribute that to a sale? So having a good attribution model, I think, and the one that we use, I think it was Rockport, or Rock something. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
Uh, but that was the best attribution model that I could find for both organic and for paid. So
Okay. I love it. I love it. So having
box. I'm sorry, Rockerbox.
Okay, great. So having a higher degree of understanding as to where your stuff is actually coming from,
Yep.
being able to quantify things better. Okay, let's move into the lightning round. I'm going to ask you some simple questions here. Short answers are fine. If you don't like the question, you can say skip it.
Oh, you
Okay.
think? Okay.
Yeah. You've operated in 17 different countries. What's one city that changed how you think about business?
Mexico City. Um, because in Mexico, and I mean this in the most complimentary, nicest way, the execution of a contract is a good basis for negotiation, right? That's when the negotiation starts, and the negotiation after the contract is signed is based on one thing and one thing only: in relationships. So it's a little like the Far East in that respect. You've got to have respect and understanding and relationships. I'd say Mexico City.
Love it. Okay. What's the biggest red flag that you see in a CEO within the first 5 minutes of meeting them?
How many times they use the word "I"?
What do you mean?
Uh, I've run this company for 5 years, and when I came in, it was doing 5 million, and now it's doing 20 million thanks to me. I've built a great team. I've done this. I've done that.
Why does it concern you so much? Why is that a red flag?
Because it tells me that they're really not focused on who built the company. Sure, you may have provided the guidance. Sure, you may have helped create the culture, but there's a whole bunch of people beneath you who actually executed. It's a long walk from your head, Mr. CEO, to making the sale, right? It's a long walk. And chances are you haven't taken that walk in a while, right? But if you were to, you'd see that there's a whole lot of people, making it happen.
Okay. Growth or profitability? If you can only chase one in year number one, which one is it and why?
I'm going to regret saying this growth. Um,
I would agree. I would agree.
yeah, but
Yeah.
growth.
If there's a season for everything.
Yeah,
If year
yeah,
number one, you're in the season of growth.
yeah. But you got to have you either have to have a reserve or deep pockets to fund that growth because chances are cash flow is not going to keep up with you. If you're lucky, it will, but rarely does it. But I'd have to say growth. Yeah,
What's a belief most operators hold about scaling that you think is just flat out wrong?
they confuse scaling with growth.
Okay.
They don't understand that scaling is about output per unit input.
Okay. Last question. An operator wants to exit an already profitable business to private equity. What EBITDA or free cash flow should they shoot for a meaningful exit, and why?
Outstanding question because I've been to this movie a few times and got screwed a few times. Um, and what I found is it's a duh moment, but if you have a transaction based business, your multiple is going to be pretty slim. If you have what I call a subscription based business, then your multiple is going to be 3 to 4 times what you would get for a transaction business. So, if you have somebody who, uh, let me give you an example. I have a newsletter that I write every week. I have 4,000 subscribers, pay 149 a year, and the attrition rate is pretty small. So it's a constant. It's predictable. So I think that um, make sure that when you're making strategic decisions today, you're not making them for today. You're making them for an exit strategy 24 to 36 months from now. I'm going through this right now with a company that we're just launching. And I'm focused on 36 months from now. I'm not in this to build a company. I'm not in this to, create 5,000 employees. I'm in it to get the highest multiple possible 3 years from now.
Last question, and it just sparked my interest because of what you just said. Why do a newsletter when instead you could do a school community?
Hmm. It's great. Enough. Man, you're full of great questions. I don't know the answer to that, Peter. I think first of all, I started the newsletter to get rid of this pent up creative stuff I have in me. And some people work out, some people go to therapy. Me, I drink rum, smoke cigars, and write newsletters. Right. Um, so to me, it was a creative outlet, and I just found out that people kind of went to it. And I focus on three things: I focus on leadership, I focus on personal development, and I focus on emotional intelligence. Every newsletter has articles on and studies on those three things. Comes out once a week. Um, in terms of the school stuff, I've looked at that, but I only have so much bandwidth, and I just haven't given it the attention it probably deserves.
Okay. Dr. Crawford Welch, it was a pleasure having you on today. This was a truly an enjoyable conversation. I'm thankful that you're here. I'm thankful that we're friends, and I'm thankful that we continue to be friends. I look forward to having many more amazing conversations like this with you. For my audience, how do they find you on socials? What's the number one social media channel that they can find you
Yeah.
on?
So last time we talked, you had asked me where could we find me, and I said, I've been so busy with clients, I really haven't got anything up there right now. That's changed as of 48 hours from now. It's the Scale Up Company, the Scale Up Company, and it's on. We're on Twitter. We're on. Sorry, Twitter. Listen to me. We're on X. We're on all the social media channels: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. You'll find us. So,
If you could leave company owners, founders here with one piece of advice that they should walk away with, what would that be?
go and look at your cash flow. And there's so many things I could say. Conversion rate.
Yeah.
That's when I could, but cash flow. Go because it all comes down to that.
Yeah.
And go look. Just because you're growing, 6 months from now, your cash flow could be worse off than it is now. So manage your business based on cash flow.
Profit is sanity.
Yeah, and it's again, it's one of those things that we're profitable. Well, you can be profitable and have no cash, right? So especially in the early stages, that changes when you're down the road
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Peter. I have to.
Simon, thank
I,
you.
I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome coming on here because I've seen some of the guests that you've had on here, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure I'm up for that.
No, no, this was fantastic. Honestly, this was one of the best conversations I've had in a long time. So thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it. We'll be
All right,
talking.
everybody, thank you for tuning in today. We'll see you next time.